My name is Marcus Thompson, and 5 minutes of death taught me more about truth than 43 years of life ever did. I'm a defense attorney, or at least I was before my heart stopped in the middle of closing arguments and I found myself standing in a place where no amount of eloquent reasoning, no carefully crafted narrative, and no persuasive rhetoric could change the verdict that was about to be pronounced. What I saw there, what I witnessed in those 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours, will haunt me for the rest of my life. Not because it was terrifying, though parts of it were, but because it was true in a way that nothing else I'd ever experienced had been true. I saw the final judgment, the moment when every human being who has ever lived stands before God and gives an account for their life. And what I witnessed shattered every assumption I'd built my career and my worldview around. I'd spent 2 decades in courtrooms arguing that truth was subjective, that morality was relative, that right and wrong were social constructs we'd invented to control behavior. I'd defended murderers by reframing their actions as products of environment and circumstance. I'd gotten rapists acquitted by destroying victims' credibility and planting reasonable doubt. I'd helped wealthy criminals avoid consequences by exploiting legal loopholes and procedural technicalities. And I'd done it all with a clear conscience, because I believed that justice was simply a game where the best storyteller won, and truth was whatever you could convince 12 people to believe. I was good at my job. Extraordinarily good. My win rate was among the highest in the state. My fees were astronomical, and my reputation for getting impossible acquittals made me the first call for anyone with money and a serious legal problem. I lived in a penthouse downtown, drove a Tesla, wore custom suits, and dated women half my age. By every measure society uses to define success, I'd made it. But I'd never once stopped to consider what would happen when the game ended and I had to face a judge who couldn't be fooled by clever arguments or swayed by emotional appeals. The heart attack happened on a Tuesday morning in November, right in the middle of my closing statement for a case that should have been unwinnable. My client was a pharmaceutical executive accused of knowing his company's painkiller was causing deaths and covering it up to protect profits. The evidence was damning. Internal emails, whistleblower testimony, statistical analyses showing a clear pattern. But I'd found my angle, my narrative that would plant just enough doubt. I was painting him as a dedicated professional who'd relied on the expertise of others, a man who'd been betrayed by subordinates who'd hidden critical information from him. The jury was listening, leaning forward, beginning to see him through the lens I was creating. I felt that familiar thrill of knowing I was about to win another impossible case. Then the pain hit my chest like a sledgehammer. My left arm went numb, my vision blurred, and I heard myself say something that didn't make sense before I collapsed onto the courtroom floor. The last thing I remember was the judge's panicked voice calling for someone to call 911, the sound of chairs scraping as people rushed toward me, and a strange detachment as I watched the chaos from somewhere above my own body. That's when I realized I wasn't in the courtroom anymore. I was standing in a space so vast it seemed to have no boundaries, filled with light that wasn't coming from any source, but seemed to be the very substance of the place itself. And I wasn't alone. There were people everywhere, millions of them, stretching out in lines that disappeared into infinity. They stood silent, waiting, and the expression on their faces ranged from confused to terrified to completely blank, as if they'd already accepted whatever was about to happen. I looked down and realized I was in one of those lines, standing between a middle-aged woman in a hospital gown who kept whispering, "This can't be happening," and a young man in military fatigues who stared straight ahead with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much. "Where are we?" I asked the woman, but she didn't respond, didn't even look at me, just kept repeating her mantra like a broken record. The line moved forward, not walking, but somehow flowing, and as we got closer to wherever we were going, I started to hear sounds that made my blood run cold. Some people were weeping, deep, gut-wrenching sobs that sounded like something breaking inside them. Others were arguing, their voices rising in desperation as they made their case, pleaded their defense, listed their good deeds and charitable acts. A few were screaming, raw terror that didn't sound human, like animals caught in traps. And underneath it all was a sound I couldn't quite identify at first. Something that made my skin crawl. The sound of someone speaking in a voice that carried absolute authority, pronouncing judgments that couldn't be appealed or overturned. That's when I saw the throne. It wasn't made of gold or jewels or any earthly material, but it blazed with light so intense I should have been blinded, but somehow could see perfectly. And sitting on that throne was a figure I instinctively knew was Jesus, though he looked nothing like the gentle shepherd from religious art or the hippie Jesus of popular culture. This was Jesus as judge, radiating holiness that made me understand for the first time what that word actually meant. Not just moral goodness or ethical purity, but something so utterly other, so completely perfect, that standing in his presence made you feel like a disease in the presence of health, like darkness in the presence of light, like a lie in the presence of truth.
The line moved forward again, and I watched the person at the front step toward the throne. She was an older woman, maybe 70, wearing what looked like a Sunday dress and clutching a Bible to her chest like a shield. "I have served you faithfully," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "I attended church every Sunday for 60 years. I taught Sunday school, I gave to missions, I read my Bible daily, I prayed, I witnessed to my neighbors, I lived according to your commands. Surely I have earned my place in your kingdom." And then Jesus spoke, and his voice wasn't loud, but it filled everything, resonated in my bones, made the air itself vibrate with authority. "I never knew you," he said. And those 4 words carried such finality that they felt like a door slamming shut. The woman's face went white. "But I knew you," she protested. "I studied your word, I sang your praises, I called you Lord." "Did you?" he asked. And suddenly the air around the woman shimmered, and images began to appear, scenes from her life playing out like a movie. I saw her in church, singing worship songs while mentally criticizing the woman in front of her for gaining weight. I saw her teaching Sunday school while harboring secret resentment toward the pastor who'd overlooked her for a leadership position. I saw her reading her Bible each morning and then spending her afternoons gossiping about other church members, disguising it as prayer requests. I saw her witnessing to neighbors while secretly feeling superior to them, glad she wasn't like those sinners who didn't have their lives together. Every moment of her life was there, exposed in perfect detail. Not just what she'd done, but why she'd done it. Not just her actions, but the thoughts and motivations behind them. And what I saw wasn't a faithful servant, but a performer who'd been playing a role for 60 years. Someone who'd used religion to feel superior to others while her heart remained hard and cold and utterly unchanged. "You called me Lord with your lips," Jesus said, "but your heart was far from me. You performed righteousness but never possessed it. You knew about me, but never knew me. You built your house on sand, and now the storm has come." 2 angels appeared beside the woman, and she began to scream as they led her away from the throne toward a darkness I couldn't see, but could somehow feel. A place of absolute isolation, total separation from everything good and true and beautiful. Her screams faded into the distance, but the sound of them stayed with me, echoing in my mind. The line moved forward. The next person was a man in his 30s, Athletic build, expensive watch. The kind of guy who looked like he'd succeeded at everything he'd ever tried. "I was a good person," he said, confidently, as if that settled everything. "I provided for my family. I donated to charity. I volunteered in my community. I never broke any major laws. I lived a moral life by any reasonable standard." Jesus looked at him with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger, but something like sadness mixed with something harder. "By what standard did you measure morality?" he asked. The man hesitated, sensing a trap but not seeing it yet. "By common sense," he said. "By basic human decency. I treated people fairly. I helped those in need. I didn't hurt anyone." The same thing happened. The air shimmered, and the man's life appeared in perfect detail. "I saw him at work, friendly and professional with colleagues, while systematically destroying a coworker's reputation to eliminate competition for a promotion. I saw him donating to charity while cheating on his taxes to protect his wealth. I saw him volunteering at a soup kitchen while mentally congratulating himself for being better than the people he was serving. I saw him treating his wife with public affection while carrying on affairs with 3 different women, lying smoothly and without guilt. I saw him helping his children with homework while secretly viewing pornography every night after they went to bed, feeding an addiction that had warped his view of women into something dark and exploitative. I saw every moment of cruelty he dismissed as necessary, every act of selfishness he justified as earned, every lie he told himself about who he really was. You measured yourself by your own standard," Jesus said, "and found yourself acceptable. But I am the standard, and by my measure you fall short." The man's confidence crumbled. "But I didn't know," he stammered. "I didn't know what the standard was. No one told me." "Did they not?" Jesus asked. And more images appeared, this time of moments when the man had heard truth and rejected it. A college roommate who'd shared the gospel and been mocked for his beliefs. A co-worker who'd invited him to church and been brushed off with excuses. A funeral where a pastor had spoken about judgment and eternity, and he'd checked his phone, bored and dismissive. A moment alone in a hotel room when he'd felt a strange pull toward prayer, toward God, toward something more, and he turned on the TV instead and drowned it out with noise. "You knew enough to seek more," Jesus said, "but you preferred darkness because your deeds were evil. You loved your sin more than you loved truth." The man tried to argue, to make his case, to appeal to some higher court, but there was no higher court, no appeal process, no loophole to exploit. The judgment was final, absolute, irrevocable. He was led away toward that same darkness, and his protest faded into silence. I watched person after person approach the throne, and a pattern began to emerge that terrified me. Some were religious people who had performed faith without possessing it, who had built impressive Christian resumes while their hearts remained unchanged.
Some were good people who'd lived moral lives by their own standards, but had rejected the standard Jesus provided. Some were people who'd done terrible things and expected mercy without ever seeking it, who'd lived however they wanted and assumed they'd be forgiven in the end because surely a loving God wouldn't send anyone to hell. One by one, their lives were exposed in that terrible light, and one by one they heard the verdict that couldn't be changed. "Depart from me, I never knew you. There is no place for you here." Some went silently, as if they'd known all along how this would end. Some went screaming, raging against the injustice of being held accountable for choices they believed were their right to make. Some went weeping, finally understanding the magnitude of what they'd lost. But they all went, led away toward that darkness that I was beginning to understand wasn't just absence of light, but absence of everything good. No love, no joy, no peace, no hope, no connection, no purpose, nothing but the eternal company of their own corrupted selves and the others who'd chosen the same path. Then something changed. A man approached the throne,
someone who looked broken in a way the others hadn't. His clothes were simple, his face weathered and worn, and he didn't make any defense or offer any arguments. He just knelt before Jesus and said 5 words, "Lord, have mercy on me." The air shimmered again, and his life appeared, and what I saw shocked me because it was terrible. This man had done things I wouldn't have thought possible. Violence, theft, betrayal, cruelty of the worst kind. His life was a catalog of sin that should have damned him 1,000 times over. But there was something else in the story, a moment where everything changed. I saw him broken and alone in a prison cell, finally facing what he really was, and I saw him cry out to God with nothing to offer but his desperate need for salvation. I saw Jesus meet him in that cell, not with condemnation, but with mercy that transformed everything. I saw the man's life after that moment, still difficult, still marked by consequences of his past choices, but different because he was different. Changed from the inside out, someone who'd been made new by grace he didn't deserve, but had received anyway because he'd finally admitted he needed it. "Welcome home," Jesus said, and his voice was so full of joy that it made me ache with longing. "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master." The man wept as angels led him, not toward darkness, but toward light, so brilliant and beautiful it made everything else look like shadows. He'd done terrible things, but he'd been forgiven. He'd deserved judgment, but he'd received mercy. And the difference between him and all the others I'd watched being led to darkness wasn't that he'd been a better person or lived a more moral life. The difference was that he'd admitted his need and accepted the grace that was offered. The line moved forward again, and suddenly I realized with a jolt of terror that I was next. My turn had come, and I had no defense prepared, no argument to make, no narrative that would save me. I stepped toward the throne on legs that felt like they might collapse, and I looked into the face of Jesus, knowing that everything I really was, everything I'd hidden and denied and rationalized for 43 years, was about to be exposed in a light that revealed absolute truth. I opened my mouth to speak, but Jesus spoke first. "Marcus," he said, and hearing my name in that voice made me understand that he'd known me always, had seen every moment of my life even as I was living it, had watched me choose darkness over and over again while he waited for me to turn. The air shimmered, and my life appeared, and what I saw destroyed me. I saw every case I'd won by suppressing evidence I knew would convict guilty clients. I saw the victims I'd destroyed on the witness stand, attacking their character and credibility to get rapists and murderers acquitted. I saw the truth I'd twisted, the lies I'd told, the justice I'd perverted, all in service of winning and getting paid. I saw my relationships, 3 marriages destroyed by my selfishness and infidelity, children who barely knew me because I'd prioritized career over family, friendships I'd cultivated only for their usefulness and discarded when they couldn't benefit me anymore. I saw the people I'd stepped on to climb higher, the colleagues I'd sabotaged, the associates I'd taken credit from, the support staff I'd treated like furniture. I saw my private life, the pornography addiction I'd fed for decades, the prostitutes I'd hired when I traveled, the casual cruelty I'd shown to anyone who couldn't help me advance. I saw moments when I'd felt the pull toward something more, toward God, toward meaning beyond success and pleasure, and I saw how quickly I'd dismissed those moments, buried them under work and entertainment and the pursuit of the next victory. I saw who I really was, stripped of the charismatic defense attorney persona I'd perfected, and what I saw was a man who had built his entire life around serving himself, who had used his intelligence and talent to help guilty people escape justice, who had cared about nothing and no one except his own comfort and success. I had no defense, because there was no defense. Every charge was true, every accusation was justified, every reason for judgment was valid. I waited for the verdict I knew I deserved, for the words that would send me into that darkness where all the others had gone. But Jesus looked at me with an expression I couldn't understand at first. Not anger or disgust or even disappointment, but something that looked almost like hope.
"Marcus," he said again, "do you know why you're here?" "To be judged," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Yes," he said, "but you're here for another reason too. You're here to choose." I didn't understand. The others had no choice. They'd been judged and the verdict was final. How was I different? What made my moment at the throne something other than the inevitable conclusion of a life lived in rebellion against everything good? Then Jesus said something that changed everything. "You're not dead yet. Your heart has stopped, but can still be restarted. Your body is on an emergency room table where doctors are fighting to save you. You're standing at a threshold, a moment where two paths are still possible. You can continue forward to the judgment you deserve, or you can go back and live differently." But Marcus, he leaned forward and his eyes held mine with an intensity that made me unable to look away. "If you go back, everything must change. You cannot continue living as you have been and expect a different outcome when you stand here again. The judgment you've witnessed is real. The accountability is absolute, and there is no escape for those who refuse to admit their need and accept the grace that's offered." "What grace?" I asked, because I'd seen justice, seen judgment, seen people getting exactly what they deserved, but I hadn't understood where grace fit into the equation. His answer was simple but profound. "The grace I purchased with my blood when I took the judgment that should have fallen on everyone who would accept it. The grace I offer freely to anyone who admits they need it and can't save themselves. The grace that transforms those who receive it and makes them new. You've spent your career defending the guilty, Marcus. Will you let me defend you?" Something broke inside me then. Some wall I'd built to protect myself from truth I didn't want to face. I saw clearly for the first time that I'd been defending the indefensible my whole life, starting with defending my own sins against the conscience that kept trying to convict me. I'd silenced that voice by telling myself morality was relative, truth was subjective, that no one had the right to judge anyone else. But standing before absolute truth, I couldn't maintain those lies anymore. "I'm guilty," I said, and speaking those words out loud felt like confession, like finally admitting what I'd always known but refused to acknowledge. "I'm guilty of everything. I deserve this judgment. I have no defense." "Then let me be your defense," Jesus said. "Accept what I've done for you. Receive the grace I'm offering. Go back and live as someone who's been forgiven, someone who knows the truth, someone who uses the time you have left to point others toward the mercy that saved you." "I don't know how to do that," I admitted. "I've built my whole life around lies. I don't know how to live in truth." "That's what my spirit is for," he said, "to teach you, to guide you, to change you from the inside out. But you have to choose, Marcus, right now. Will you accept my grace or reject it? Will you let me save you or insist on saving yourself?" The choice should have been obvious, should have been instant, but I felt the weight of what he was asking. Accepting his grace meant admitting I needed it, meant surrendering the control I'd spent my whole life maintaining, meant becoming someone fundamentally different than who I'd been. It meant abandoning the career I'd built on helping guilty people escape justice. It meant facing the people I'd hurt and making amends I couldn't afford. It meant living with a standard I couldn't maintain on my own, depending on grace I didn't deserve. But the alternative was that darkness, that isolation, that eternal separation from everything good. "I choose grace," I said, and as soon as the words left my mouth, I felt something change, like a door opening inside me that had been locked my whole life. "I choose to let you defend me because I can't defend myself. I choose to accept what you've done for me because I could never do it myself. I choose to go back and live differently because I finally understand that the way I've been living leads only to death." "Then go," Jesus said, and there was so much joy in his voice that it made me want to weep. "Go back and tell them what you've seen. Tell them that judgment is real, that accountability is absolute, that everyone will stand where you're standing and give an account for their life. Tell them that the final judgment is coming, and most people are completely unprepared. But Marcus, and he held up his hands, and I saw the scars there. Tell them also that grace is real, that mercy is available, that I took their judgment so they could receive my righteousness. Tell them that the same grace that saved you can save anyone, but they have to choose it while there's still time. Tell them that after death comes judgment, but before judgment comes choice. And that choice is available now, today, this moment, but not forever. I felt myself being pulled back, away from that place of terrible truth and extraordinary grace, back toward the world of lies and performance and carefully maintained illusions. But I wasn't the same person who left. Something had fundamentally changed inside me, some core transformation that went deeper than decision or determination. I'd seen truth in a way that couldn't be unseen, and that truth had both condemned me and saved me, showing me exactly what I deserved and exactly what I'd been given instead. I woke up gasping in the emergency room with doctors and nurses surrounding me, their faces showing the relief people feel when they've pulled someone back from death.
"You were gone for 5 minutes," one of them said. "We thought we'd lost you." "You did," I said quietly, "but I came back." The next few days were a blur of medical tests, bewildered doctors who couldn't understand why I'd survived without brain damage, and worried visits from colleagues who kept asking when I'd be back at work. But I knew I was never going back to work, not the way they meant. My career as a defense attorney was over the moment I stood before Jesus and understood what I'd really been doing all those years. I wasn't defending the innocent or ensuring justice was served. I was helping guilty people escape consequences while their victims suffered without recourse. I was using my intelligence and eloquence to serve darkness, and I couldn't do it anymore. The first thing I did when I got home was contact the prosecutor in the pharmaceutical case. I told him everything: the suppressed evidence I'd planned to hide, the witnesses I'd planned to discredit with information I knew was false, the entire defense strategy that was built on deception. I essentially helped him convict my own client. My firm fired me immediately, threatened to sue me for breach of ethics, and made sure I'd never practice law in this state again. I didn't care. The second thing I did was start making a list of people I needed to face. Cases where I knew the verdict had been wrong because of what I'd done. Victims I'd destroyed on the witness stand. Families who'd watched guilty people walk free because of my manipulation. Prosecutors I'd deceived. Colleagues I'd sabotaged. The list was long, and getting through it has been the most painful thing I've ever done. Some people accepted my apologies and my attempts at restitution. Many didn't. Some told me the damage I'd done couldn't be undone, that lives had been destroyed by the injustice I'd helped perpetrate, that no amount of sorry would fix what I'd broken. They were right. But I had to try anyway, because living with the truth meant facing what that truth revealed about my past. The third thing I did was start telling my story to anyone who would listen. I expected people to think I was crazy, that the oxygen deprivation had caused hallucinations I'd mistaken for reality. Some did, but others recognized truth when they heard it, even truth that came through the vehicle of what they wanted to dismiss as a near-death experience. I spoke at churches, at recovery meetings, at prisons, anywhere people were willing to hear about the final judgment and the grace that's available before it comes. And I discovered something surprising. People who'd built their lives on lies like I had, people who'd convinced themselves that truth was relative and morality was subjective, those people recognized what I was saying because somewhere deep inside, they already knew it. They'd silenced the voice of conscience the same way I had, but that voice had never completely gone away. It had just been waiting for someone to validate what it had been saying all along. 12 months later, my life looks nothing like it did before my heart stopped. I live in a small apartment instead of a penthouse, drive a used Honda instead of a Tesla, work construction instead of commanding a courtroom. I've lost everything I spent 43 years building: wealth, status, reputation, career, the illusion of success. But I've gained something infinitely more valuable. I've gained truth, the kind of truth that sets you free even as it costs you everything. The kind of truth that shows you who you really are and who you could become. The kind of truth that makes you willing to lose the whole world because you finally understood what your soul is worth. And I've gained the certainty that when I stand before Jesus again, and I will, we all will, the verdict will be different. Not because I've earned it through good works or moral living or religious performance, but because I've accepted the grace He offers to anyone willing to admit they need it. I still struggle. I still face temptation to return to the person I was, to build my life around success and comfort and self-service, but I've seen where that path ends, and the memory of that judgment keeps me from straying too far. I've witnessed the final judgment, seen the absolute accountability that awaits everyone who's ever lived, understood the terrible reality that our choices matter eternally, and our lives are building toward a moment when everything will be revealed. But I've also witnessed grace, mercy extended to the guilty, righteousness given to the unrighteous, transformation offered to anyone willing to receive it. The final judgment is coming. Every person reading this will stand before that throne and give an account. Your life will be displayed in perfect detail, every action and word and thought exposed in light that reveals absolute truth. Your motivations will be examined, your heart will be revealed, your choices will be evaluated against the standard of perfect holiness, and you will receive exactly what you deserve, unless you accept the grace that allows you to receive what Christ deserved instead. That's the message I came back to share. Not that you should be afraid, though fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but that you should choose grace while it's still available, that you should accept the mercy being offered before the door closes and judgment becomes the only option left, that you should examine your life honestly, see yourself truthfully, and admit your need before it's too late to do anything about it. My name is Marcus Thompson. 5 minutes of death taught me what 43 years of life couldn't. The final judgment is real, accountability is absolute, and everyone will face it. The question that will determine your eternity isn't whether you've been good enough. None of us have.
The question is whether you've been honest enough to admit you need grace and humble enough to accept it from the only one who can give it. I almost missed it. I almost walked into that darkness with all the others who'd convinced themselves that judgment was a myth, that accountability was a religious scare tactic, that they'd be fine because they were basically good people who hadn't done anything that bad. I almost learned too late that basically good isn't good enough when you're standing before perfect holiness, and nothing that bad still condemns you when one sin is enough to separate you from a perfectly holy God. But I was given a second chance, pulled back from death to live differently and warn others about what's coming. So I'm warning you now. Examine your life honestly. Face who you really are without the justifications and rationalizations that make you comfortable. Ask yourself what verdict you'd receive if you had to stand before perfect justice right now, this moment, with every hidden thing exposed and every secret revealed. If the answer frightens you, if you know you're not ready, then accept the grace that's being offered. Stop defending yourself and let Jesus defend you. Stop trying to save yourself and let Him save you. Stop building your life on lies and start living in truth. The final judgment is coming, but grace is available now. The choice is yours, but the window for choosing won't stay open forever. One day your heart will stop like mine did, and you'll find yourself standing in that line, waiting your turn to approach the throne. Will you be ready? Will you have accepted the grace that makes all the difference? Or will you stand there like I almost did, with no defense except the life you lived, facing the judgment you earned? Comment below and tell me honestly, if you had to face final judgment right now, today, do you know for certain that you'd be welcomed home? Or would you hear those terrible words, "Depart from me, I never knew you"? Your answer to that question might be the most important thing you ever consider.